Good evening, everybody. Professor Ayorinde welcoming all of you to another Zoom session. Today's topic, tips for professors who are teaching online. Let us go straight to the tips. Tip number 1. While you are teaching online, you do want to simulate the classroom experience for both you and your students. Simulate classroom experience for both you and your student. And in so doing, you want to write as much as possible. In other words, write most of your lectures, write your lectures, and also encourage your students to take notes. In other words, just as you are writing, you want your student to also be writing. Encourage your students to take notes. Indeed, you may want to give your students some kind of incentive for taking notes by giving a little credit for those students who are taking very good notes. And in order to simulate the classroom experience, of course, my recommendation for you is to use the Microsoft. In other words, you want to integrate the Microsoft .365 OneNote you want to integrate the Microsoft 365 OneNote into the Zoom platform. And this allows you to write very seamlessly on the screen as though you are writing on the whiteboard in your classroom, or as though you are writing on the chalkboard in your face-to-face classroom. Tip number 2. Engage your students. Engage the students. In other words, you want to ask them questions. You also want to encourage your students to ask you questions. Encourage your students to ask questions. Tip number 3. You want to be sure to set clear, guidelines for online session. For example, you need to let the students know that while they are in the classroom, the online session, you do expect them to take notes, and that you do expect that they do not use the chat feature to socialize with each other during the course of the lecture. And indeed, you also want to let them know that you expect them to be in class on time. In other words, they need to be on the online session on time. Indeed, you may want to let them know that you will give a grace period of about 15 to 20 minutes. Anybody who comes 15 minutes after the session starts, the class will be logged and they will not be able to attend the session. And you could do this by using one of the features in the Zoom platform. For example, upon entering the Zoom web conferencing room, you will see the control panel at the bottom of the page, right here. This is the control panel right here. You will see the control panel at the bottom of the page. And one of the features on that control panel is the security feature right here. Once you click on that security feature, that takes you to this drop-down menu, this right here. And some of the options on that drop-down menu is the feature that allows you to lock the classroom session at any time. In other words, you could tell your students if they are late to class, give them a grace period of 15 minutes, that the class will be locked and they will not be able to enter the session. The point here is you need to set some strict administrative guidelines for how the session will be run. Okay, now I do want to go back to the the point I made earlier, that you do need to use the Microsoft Office 365 OneNote. I know a lot of people have been coming to me saying, Professor, well, I have prepared my lecture notes in PowerPoint. So what do I need to do with the PowerPoint presentation, that the slides that I've made? What I say to them, all you need to do is to cut and paste the PowerPoint slide into the OneNote application. Say, for example, take a look at this slide that I have on the screen. This slide actually is a slide from one of my PowerPoint presentation. And all I had to do was simply cut and paste this PowerPoint slide into the OneNote. You can see here, synthesis of esters. Okay, now supposing I am giving a lecture, I have a series of slides of this nature. All I have to do is simply go through these slides, right? I say that is wrong, because the students online will very easily lose concentration. You do want to write in as much as possible to give the student a chance to also write into their notebook, and that keeps the student engaged. So you want to engage the students. So let us use this as an example of a potential lecture. Supposing I have this, I've given this to the student in form of a slide, but this does not stop me from giving further examples of synthesis of esters. For example, now that I have this on the OneNote, I could very seamlessly go to another page and give another example of that previous reaction. Could simply say, go from here. Okay, another example. Okay, instead of using the molecule that I used before in that slide, the previous slide, I could do this. I could do this. Okay, so this reaction now between this molecule here and this molecule. What do I want to show here? I want to demonstrate another example of the synthesis of esters using the SN2 reaction. Okay, and of course, you can show the movement of electron by simply showing this oxygen is attacking that carbon, just as we showed in the previous slide, and the carbon iodine bond is breaking away, with the iodine taking the pair of electrons to itself. And then what do we get? Okay, now say this is an example of an SN2 reaction. So even though I showed an example previously using a slide, now because of the seamless nature of the OneNote application, I could go from page to page, give several more examples using different molecules to demonstrate that particular set of reaction. Okay, so this is what we mean by giving the students a classroom experience. In other words, you simulate the experience they would normally obtain if they were in a face-to-face session in the classroom. Now, to further demonstrate the ability or the capacity for Zoom coupled with Microsoft 365 OneNote to give a seamless experience for both professor and student, I want to use the synthesis of what I call a featured molecule today, as a demonstration. So today we are going to feature on this particular molecule we call fixofenadine. Fixofenadine, of course, some of you may know this as Allegra. Now, when you use commercially as Allegra, the fixofenadine is actually complex with hydrogen chloride. So we will have hydrogen chloride complexing with this molecule here. And that will be your Allegra. So Allegra is essentially fixofenadine hydrochloride. Okay, so let us see how do we make fixofenadine in the laboratory. Keep in mind, all we want to do here is to demonstrate how we can use Zoom coupled with Microsoft Office 365 OneNote to provide a face-to-face classroom experience for both you and your students. So let us see, how do we make this molecule? How do we make this molecule? Let us now take a look. Notice how very seamless or seamlessly I go from one page to another. I could simply start a new page. Say, okay, we want to show the synthesis of, let us just say Allegra at this point. Synthesis of Allegra, which will be fixofenadine hydrochloride. We start the synthetic process, starting with a simple molecule Okay, let us write that a little better. We start with this molecule here. We are going, let us give this a name. Call this ethyl. For piperidine ethyl 4-piperidine carboxylate. So we start with ethyl 4-piperidine carboxylate, and we are going to react this with what we call a Grignard reagent. We are going to react this with a Grignard reagent. Call this step 1. And after the Grignard reagent has reacted with 4-piperidine carboxylate, We then have dilute acid. At this point, just as I am writing, the student will also be writing, and I will also be asking the student questions, and the student will be free to also ask me questions through the chat window or through the audio system. So the Grignard reagent reacting with the piperidine carboxylate will now give this intermediate product. Okay, let me change the color of the pen. So the Grignard reagent reacts with the piperidine carboxylate to form this intermediate product. Let us call this just a tertiary alcohol. Let us simply call this a tertiary alcohol. Now the tertiary alcohol will now react with this molecule here. Let us call this molecule 4-bromobutanol acetal. 4-bromobutanol acetal. Actually, this molecule we call acetal is It is what we call a protected aldehyde. A protected aldehyde. Okay, so the acetal will react to give this another intermediate product. Okay, just as I am writing here, notice that if I was just using a slide, I would be rushing through the slide and the students simply will not be able to keep up with the lecture, and very easily they will lose interest in the lecture and lose concentration in what is happening in this class session. But when you are the professor writing everything as though you are in the classroom face to face, the students are also writing notes, they are engaged, that will keep their concentration intact. Okay, so now what do we get out of this? We now get okay, in this step here, the acetal will react with the tertiary alcohol. I have that here. And then as step 2, you add dilute acid. What the dilute acid will do is to convert this part of the molecule here, this part of the molecule, which is the acetal part, convert to the aldehyde functionality right here. And of course, you notice what is happening here also. In this particular reaction, the nitrogen here, right here, is displacing the bromine atom right here. So what we have we now have the nitrogen is now bonded to this carbon right here. Now see the nitrogen carbon bond right here, okay? And in the process, after the addition of dilute acid, the acetal part is now converted to the aldehyde. Okay, so we have one more step to go before we get to our final product, Allegra. By the way, I did not tell you, Allegra is used as an anti-allergic medicinal drug. It is used when you have a hay fever, in other words, watery eyes, red eyes, running nose, rashes on your skin, itching skin. So Allegra, it is an anti-allergic medicinal drug. So it is a very useful drug indeed. Okay, so now let's go to the last step of this process. So we're now going to take this aldehyde here. Let us simply just call this the aldehyde. We take that aldehyde. We are now going to react the aldehyde with another reagent. Let us move this. We're going to react this with another reagent. And that will be this molecule here. This is a lithium compound. So now the lithium compound, this here, will now react with the aldehyde. Okay, the first thing, the lithium compound react with the aldehyde, and then say that is step one. Then for step two, we are going to add dilute hydrochloric acid solution. Okay. Folks, so as you see here, we are going through this session as though we are in the classroom. Everything is written down on the screen as though you are writing on your chalkboard or the whiteboard, and that gives your student a chance to engage with your lecture by also for them writing the notes down in their notebook. And of course, that gives them a chance to ask you questions, and you could also ask them questions. Okay, so now that gives us our final product. Let us see what that would look like. Let me write that better than that. As hydrogen attached to the oxygen. Okay. Okay, and because of the hydrochloric acid, we then have the hydrochloric acid here. And of course, this is now our final product, which is our Allegra, which is fixofenadine hydrochloride. Fixofenadine hydrochloride. Now, let me now allow us to see the complete synthetic scheme. Okay, let's bring everything into focus. So now we can see from the beginning to the end. Okay, so now you see the complete synthetic process. Take this out here. Okay, So now we see we started with the ethyl 4-piperidine carboxylate, which is this molecule here, and then we react that with the Grignard reagent, which is this molecule here, and we obtain the tertiary alcohol, which is this molecule here, right here. And then we reacted the tertiary alcohol, just for lack of a better name at this point, with the 4-bromobutanol acetal, which is this here, and that gives us the aldehyde, which is this here. And from the aldehyde, we reacted the aldehyde with the lithium compound here, which is here, followed by addition of aqueous hydrochloric acid, and that gives us our final product, fixofenadine, which is the generic name, fixofenadine hydrochloride. Okay, so now the point to all of this is that you could use Zoom in combination with Microsoft Office 365 OneNote to provide online lecture to your students so that you and your students who have a classroom experience as though you are in a face-to-face session. The OneNote allows you very seamlessly to go from page to page, to extend the page, and write your complete lecture as though you are in the classroom. And in so doing, your students are able to engage with you by also taking notes, asking questions, and you asking your students questions. So we are getting close to the end of today's session. But before we leave, let me give credit. Let me give credit to the source of my synthetic scheme for fixofenadine hydrochloride. Okay, here, the source actually came from Wikipedia, Wikibooks. And you can see here, I believe the primary sources will be, if you take a look at this here, the primary sources are some paper that was written in 1999 in the Organic Chemistry of Drug Synthesis. Actually, it was a book written by Wiley Interscience, published by Wiley Interscience. And I believe the author of the particular synthetic scheme that we discuss will be Daniel Lechnicer. And also another author from the Journal of Organic Chemistry. That was a paper published in what year was this? 1994. Okay, I believe we have several authors here, as you can see. So anyway, so we have given credit to whom credit is due. You can see the synthetic process that was outlined, even though we use only 3 of the steps. I believe the total steps was about 6. Okay. So at this point, folks, we have come to the end of our session. Keep in mind the purpose of what we are doing is simply to demonstrate the capacity of Zoom to be used as a means for delivering online lecture for your students, such that both you and your students will simulate or have the classroom experience as though you are in the classroom. So folks, until I see you again, I say so long.